Okay, so this is a video of me redoing Rohini nakshatra, because this is one of the many few nakshatra videos that I'm redoing, because now I got way more deeper knowledge and better understanding of certain nakshatras that I didn't have on my first run through this series. So I've been motivated and inspired to do Rohini next. Rohini is a nakshatra that falls between 10 degrees to 23.20 degrees. This is going to be a damn near an hour video because I took down a shitload of notes. The deity associated with this nakshatra, of course, is Brahma. And the yoni animal, the sexual animal associated with this nakshatra, is a male cobra. You could just say a snake, basically, and stuff. And the symbol of this nakshatra is a chariot or a cart pulled by an ox. And then, at least according to the Cosmic Insights app, they give additional symbols that are associated with this nakshatra, and I was able to draw my own, conclusions based upon these alternative symbols. But according to the Cosmic Insights app, aside from a chariot pulled by an ox, you have the other alternative symbols being a temple, a banyan tree, and fish. So now, which one do I want to start dropping knowledge and gems on? And also, this is a moon root nakshatra, which is also very important with my analysis of this nakshatra. I'll start with tackling the symbol, the symbol of this nakshatra. Yeah, the symbolism, there you go. So, the ox is pulling the carts. Well, this is a very fertile nakshatra. As everybody who knows anything about astrology already knows, this is a very fertile nakshatra, as the Shakti associated with this nakshatra is the power to make things grow and create or restoring fertility. And then, when you look at where this nakshatra is placed, it's placed in between Kritika nakshatra, which is ruled by the fire god Agni, and it is also next to Mrigashira, who is ruled by the moon deity Soma. And the moon deity and the moon is associated with water. Agni is fire. So you see these two polarizations. You see fire and you see water. And both of these things can create life and stuff. If you need to grow like crops and plants and all that stuff, you need like the heat of the sun and the vitamins, the vitamin D of the sun, and you need the water to fertilize the plants and whatnot. So you just see that fire and that water, and together they can create life. And Rohini is right in between these two nakshatras, and this is considered to be a fertile nakshatra. And Brahma is known as a creator god, a creator deity. He's known as the self-born one. All life essentially came from him. He didn't mate and have sex with somebody to produce his offsprings. He didn't mate. It just all sprung from his body. So this is a nakshatra that deals with creation, to say the least, and is very fertile, to say the least. But back to the symbol of the ox pulling a cart. So what is an ox? I know my voice sounds funny. That's because I am a bit sick, but bear with me. But the ox is basically a castrated bull, because a bull is a male cow. But it's a male cow that has his testicles and stuff in place and stuff. But an ox can also be a male or female, apparently. But oxes are predominantly male, from what I've Googled. And oxes are used to do heavy-duty work, like pull carts and haul around crops and all that good stuff. So then, I'm thinking, what could I take from this? You could say that a Rohini person could be even though it's simple, it could be a very hard-working nakshatra. It could be a nakshatra inclined maybe to doing laborious work, like an ox who is used to just do hard lifting work and pulling on a farm. And the stuff that it's pulling, the crops and stuff that it's pulling, will, you know, support the people that it's feeding. The crops that it's pulling will help, you know, support the family, the farmer, and them selling it. So you can see like a merchant also be associated with Rohini. You can see like a good merchant be associated with Rohini nakshatra. But also, the cast of this nakshatra, it's a worker. And that is a perfect connection with the ox. Because I told you an ox is hard working. It pulls around, you know, crops and all that stuff. And the cast of this nakshatra is a worker, Shudra. So that's one connection. And then, what else can I take from the ox? With the ox being castrated, it doesn't produce testosterone. So an ox is not as aggressive and rambunctious as a bull would be. So, you know, an ox is typically a little bit more mellow. So therefore, you could say that a Rohini person might not be the most aggressive person. They're hardworking, and it can be very mellow. And also, since this is a moon-ruled nakshatra, think about the moon. The moon is the closest graha to the earth. And with it being so close to the earth, to this material world, you can naturally say that all of the moon-ruled nakshatras could be naturally inclined to being very materialistic in a sense. Which makes sense because moon falls in between all of the earth signs. And all the earth signs, they rule the Artha houses. 2, 6, 10. So in a sense, with moon being the nakshatra lord of Shravana, Hasta, and Rohini, and these nakshatras fall in the middle of these earth signs, moon is essentially like a natural significator and karaka of Artha, of materialism, of maybe, you know, wanting material desires and all that stuff. So with that connection with moon being the nakshatra lord and moon being the closest graha to the earth, you can actually say that this is a very sort of materialistic, or yeah, I don't want to say goal oriented, but you see one of the focuses here of Rohini is produce and crops and wealth and gain. And that makes sense because think about Taurus, because Rohini falls in the sign of Taurus. Taurus originally rules the second house of the birth chart. The second house of the birth chart is family, your speech, and it's your personal finances, your savings. So it deals with, you know, your money. So it makes sense that Rohini will be dealing with this type of stuff. And it makes sense that moon rules this nakshatra because, you know, moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus also, but it's mainly reached its highest exaltation apparently in Kritika. And then with this just being a moon ruled nakshatra in general, the moon has influence over the water, over the tides and whatnot. You know, moon is a natural karaka. One of its significations is water. So, you know, if you have a planet in Rohini under a lot of malefic influences, then that person could be more so inclined to maybe drinking unhealthy, negative things like a bunch of liquor or whatnot. They could be inclined to drinking a bunch of liquor and consuming other type of intoxicants. But if it's under benefic influences, then the person in Rohini could probably be more so inclined to maybe drinking a whole lot of, I don't know, benefit, positive, you know, consumptions. Maybe shit like smoothies and teas and little liquid herbal remedies and stuff. But you could see that there could be just some type of liquid that a Rohini native might really love to drink and consume, especially if it's directly connected with, you know, the second lord, or if you're an Aries ascendant and it's in the second house. But moving on to the other symbols that's associated with this nakshatra, aside from the ox pulling the carts. So I said that, we have a temple. What is a temple? Essentially, a temple is a place where you worship something. A place of worship, like a god or a deity. You go to a temple to worship something or someone. And when I think of a temple, I think of a long-lasting building, some long-lasting structure. Because think about this. Buildings and structures, they all are associated with the planet Saturn. Saturn is associated with longevity. And longevity is something that I have seen to connect to be a theme with this nakshatra of Rohini based upon the symbols. Starting with the ox. The ox is pulling the cart of the crops and all that stuff. And if you're someone who is able to farm and create your own crops, create your own produce, then you can feed yourself, you can feed your family, and you can sell the stuff that you have grown and make it into profit. So so you're able to sustain yourself. Rohini nakshatra can be a self-sustaining nakshatra, and it can also be a merchant. It can be a merchant by selling and profiting off of the sweat of his hard work. A temple associated with buildings and structures. And if there's a temple that is like associated to maybe a religion, a god, or a deity, hopefully, or more times than not, its followers are going to try to keep that temple up to date, make sure it's good and in great standings or whatnot. But I just associate buildings and temples as something that's some long-lasting structure. So with that symbol also sort of points to longevity to me, in a sense. And then the final two symbols you have is the banyan tree and the fish. And I'm trying to go to my notes real quick. So I start with the fish before I go to the tree. Now with fish, when I seen that one of the alternative symbols, according to the Cosmic Insights app, is a fish, this quote came to my mind. The quote goes like this: give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. And then another thing in regards to fish came to me in regards to the Bible. There's, a line in the Bible or a story in the Bible that says that Jesus, with like 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, ended up feeding like 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread. And I connect sort of like the bread of crops in the Rohini sense, and then 2 fishes. And at least according to Cosmic Insights, fish is an alternative symbol for this nakshatra. And with that quote, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. A Rohini native person, they want to be self-sufficient. They want to be able to take care of themselves. And if not take care of themselves, they want to maybe have somebody take care of them. But I strongly believe for the Rohini person more so than not, they want to be self-sufficient. With that caste being the worker, and with the crop, and with the symbol being an ox pulling a cart with crops and stuff. And then you have the alternative symbol being a fish. And with fish, aside from like the spiritual significance of a temple and the spiritual significance associated with fish, I'm more so taking with the symbol of fish just the ability to feed yourself, put food in your stomach and your belly. So that is my connection with the fish, and just being associated with like longevity and self-sustaining. And then you have that sort of folklore or saying that if you dream about fish, then it means that maybe somebody's pregnant, or maybe you got somebody pregnant. This is something at least I have heard. And then the connection with fish and you dreaming about the connection of you dreaming about fish, and then that being associated with somebody being pregnant, and then this being a very fertile nakshatra, and his connection with Brahma and him having all these kids. This is a very, yet again, it reiterates that this is a very fertile nakshatra. It's self-sufficient. It deals with longevity. It doesn't mind working hard to take care of itself. And then it also might be a merchant and take its hard work. It might take the fruits of its labor and sell it. This is a fixed sign that it's Taurus. It's a fixed sign. So it wants to maybe sustain its wealth. It wants to be long lasting. It wants to sustain its profits. Because remember, it's in the second house of the family that you come from and your personal wealth. So a Rohini person in this side of Taurus could want to provide enough sustenance to take care of them and their family for a long time. That's what I get from the symbols associated with Rohini nakshatra. So now that I knocked out the symbolism, let's go and jump to more stuff about the deity Brahma. Brahma is one of the major three deities, a part of the the Trinity in Hinduism. You got Shiva, you have Vishnu, and you have Brahma. Brahma is the creator god, and he's known as the self-born one, and he's also known as like the Lord of Speech, the Master of Speech, which you could also just call him as, I'm probably going to fuck up this word, but Vagasa, which is spelled Vagisa, which is an alternative name apparently for Brahma, and it essentially means what I just said, like the Lord of Speech or Master of Speech. Brahma is associated with that. That's one of his many titles, aside from Prajapati and all that good stuff. So why would he be known as like the Lord or Master of Speech? I could theorize forever about that, but let's talk about this. Brahma is associated with the Vedas. So what are the Vedas? The Vedas is essentially, texts and scriptures that is full of hymns and rituals and philosophical views on about how you should conduct yourself. So let's break that down. The Vedas, it contains hymns and stories on some of the Hindu gods and deities like Agni and Savitar and Indra and I forgot his name, Varuna, and several other gods. Hymns and tales of them are in the Vedas. Then you have philosophical knowledge in there apparently, and then you have knowledge on doing rituals and stuff. So there's a variety of knowledge and gems in the Vedas, but you can sort of almost sort of view the Vedas as like a Bible or a Quran. It's a book of stories and instructions on how you should conduct something or how you should conduct yourself in a sense. So if we was to maybe modernize that, you could say that in a sense a Rohini person could be like a lawmaker. A Rohini person could be like a lawmaker, a politician in a sense. Someone who is enforcing their own rules and laws and belief systems. And then another thing with the Vedas is that they're in Sanskrit. A lot of knowledge actually in regards to even astrology or just the Vedas is Sanskrit, an ancient old language that not many people speak and use apparently nowadays. So you can associate in a sense Rohini nakshatra with ancient old languages or speaking secret, sacred, hidden languages or secret hidden things in a sense. especially if K2 is associated with this nakshatra. And I'm about to explain that. Because think about this. K2 is headless. K2 has no head. And K2 is also associated with Gemini astrology. And if you are someone who is headless, but you're trying to speak to somebody, you're trying to convey a message, you're not going to be able to speak that message in a conventional way and manner that everybody else would, which would be orally or English or whatever language. They're going to have to get creative and find a different way to speak. So, a headless person, a K2 person in my mind, they would find ways to communicate to you, maybe through like secret symbols and languages and writing, and or maybe sign language. So this is just me theorizing, spitballing. Y'all don't gotta listen to this. But maybe a K2 and Rohini person, especially if it's associated with the second house, they might love to learn secret hidden languages, speak secret hidden languages, or just learn a different language in general. But I just see some type of connection with Brahma being known as the Lord of Speech, and him being known as the creator of the Vedas, and the Vedas being in Sanskrit originally, a language that not many people use anymore. You can clearly make a connection with Rohini nakshatra in ancient languages, and with K2 not having a head. If K2 was to try to communicate to you, it wouldn't be in a conventional way that everybody communicates, which in a practical sense would be our mouth. It would communicate with you through some maybe telepathic or cryptic way of speaking. And I just connect that to Sanskrit and all that good stuff. But I'm pretty sure y'all can agree with me and follow me on that. So, what else do I have to say? And then think about this. It's stated, or from what I just read in just little quick Googles and stuff, a lot of important or sacred information, at least maybe in like India or whatnot, or maybe in many different parts of the world, in different cultures, there's a lot of time, Buddhism is a perfect example. Because when I read some Buddhist books, there isn't like no book, no original sutra from the Buddha himself, of him writing down, what is Buddhism. It is apparently stated that all the sermons and lectures and knowledge of the Buddha was communicated orally. There was a period in time where knowledge and information was passed down orally. It wasn't written down. So you can make some type of connection with Rohini nakshatra, and with Brahma having 4 heads, and with him being known as the Lord and Master of Speeches, and with Taurus falling into the second house originally, which contains, the eyebrows to like the throat and the mouth. You can just see some type of association with speech with Rohini nakshatra. These people, they might not be a type of person who like to text. They could be somebody who rather just talk on the phone or get on FaceTime and see you in person. They rather, communicate knowledge to you verbally versus them typing it. They rather maybe meet you in person and tell you some shit. You might see that with a Rohini person, but that's a connection that I have made with the face and the Lord of Speech, and with it being Sanskrit, and with Sanskrit being an ancient language, and with ancient language I associate that with ancient sacred knowledge, and with ancient sacred knowledge at some point in time being orally, communicated and not just written. There's knowledge out there in the world where it's just passed down orally from families and not really given to the public, such as mantras and chants and all that good stuff. A Rohini person, they might really love and be interested in learning mantras and chanting and praying. They could like to do a whole lot of things orally and not just sexually, because I know some of y'all might just be messed up in the head and just go jump straight to something sexual and stuff. But that's one of the many things that I was able to take from, learning about Brahma. Another thing you could say about Rohini nakshatra is now we can talk about the super sexual, lustful nature of Brahma that's associated with this nakshatra. Another thing real quick, with Brahma having 4 heads, you can associate that with spying and stalking. A Rohini person could be really inclined to spying on you or stalking you. And there's support of this when you use like the opposite nakshatra theory, where you look at the opposite nakshatra of the planet and the nakshatra and you see similar themes. It's like a mirror. So what would be like the opposite nakshatra of Rohini? Well, if you get to like maybe 20 degrees or whatever, the opposite nakshatra of Rohini would be Jyeshtha, which is a nakshatra ruled by Indra. And Indra was cursed to have 1,000 yonis all over his head or his body. And then it was changed later to 1,000 eyeballs. And you can connect the 1,000 eyeballs or whatever to spying. So with that, you can see a theme with Rohini nakshatra with spying, especially maybe within 16.40 degrees of Rohini to 16.40 degrees of Rohini to 23.20 degrees of Rohini, because the opposite nakshatra of those degrees is Jyeshtha. So within those degrees of Rohini, the themes of spying and maybe that super ultra sexual nature could probably be real prominent, since the opposite nakshatra would be associated with Jyeshtha and Indra. But the opposite nakshatra prior to 16.40 degrees would be Narada, which deals with, it's still very sexual and lustful and searching and wandering, but we're not going to talk about those nakshatras. We're going to focus on Rohini right now. But Brahma, aside from the 4 heads, is very lustful, because you see Brahma was in quite a predicament with him creating all life, and all life coming from him. That means everybody was his son and daughter, and he lusted after one of his own daughters, one of his own children, known as Rohini. And if I'm wrong, then correct me in the comments, but I believe the daughter that he lusted after, her name was indeed Rohini, which is ironically the name of this nakshatra. And she did not want to have sex with him. She did not desire to be with him. That was her father. But he couldn't control himself, and he ends up chasing her. And then Ardra, and then Rudra, the deity of Ardra nakshatra, ends up taking like a bow and arrow and shooting off one of the heads of Brahma to stop him from chasing after his own daughter that has sex with her. And then after he gets his head shot off, he sort of comes to his own senses, and he ends up retreating and running away because he feels bad and starts to reflect on his actions. So we see that with Rohini nakshatra, there's like I don't know. You could say this with all of the nakshatras that fall in the sign of Taurus. Kritika, Rohini, and Mrigashira, they are all in some way, shape, or form connected and tied with like some sexual scandal and inappropriate sexual actions and behavior. And Brahma, he desired to have sex with his own children because everything came from him. So it's like there's no one for him to have as a wife, for him to have sex with properly. So with that connection of him lusting and chasing after his own daughter, you can connect that in a practical sense that, like I said, a Rohini person could be a spy, or a Rohini person can stalk. They could be hopeless romantics. They can always be chasing after something that they could always be chasing after a woman or a lover or something that they shouldn't have. And it's maybe not until, in a metaphorical sense, in some way, shape, or form, they get their head shot off, just like Rudra did to Brahma. that they come to their senses. And be like, damn, I fucked up. I should have been stalking this guy. I should have been stalking this woman. I should have been chasing after them. They didn't want me. I should just relax. And then, also, Brahma ends up marrying Saraswati. And she has a lot of similarities as Brahma. She's associated with knowledge and stuff too. But, just like everybody else, she is also a daughter of Brahma. And if my memory on the research that I did is still correct, then, like I said, that is his daughter. But she does not agree to have sex with him. She is just like his cohort. She's just like his consort, just for the sake of filling a position of saying that she's his wife. But they do not have sex at all. So, in a sense, with Brahma being the deity of this nakshatra, and with children coming from him, he does not have sex to produce his children. And when he does try to have sex with his children, at least in this in the tale that I just told you, we see that there's repercussions. And we see that he's married, but he's married to his own daughter. His own daughter that he's not having sex with. So you see that even though this is a very lustful and sexual and fertile nakshatra, you see that there still is some romantic, unharmony. There is some infertileness. There is trouble in paradise when it comes to romance. Which makes sense because this is a Taurus sign. I'll give y'all a little tip, or give y'all a hint or trick and tip or whatever when it comes to Taurus. Taurus is one of those signs or ascendants that are like troubled romantics. They do not have good, marital or relationship karma. And I know that sounds crazy with Taurus being a sign that is ruled by Venus, but think about it like this. If you make Taurus the ascendant, or make, any planet you have in Taurus the ascendant, there's two houses that you need to look at. The 7th house and the 6th house. Think about the 7th house. The 7th house for a Taurus planet, Taurus ascendant, would be Scorpio. Scorpio is a fixed sign. Scorpio carries that original 8th house energy of death and transitions and psychological transformation. And Scorpio is a sign that's stated to be like co-ruled by Ketu, just like Aquarius is stated to be co-ruled by Rahu. And we know that Ketu is associated with moksha. We know that Ketu is associated with things you already accomplished, things that you already done. And it's associated with like detachment. And we know that Ketu in the 7th house, it does not deny marriage or love, but it can definitely provide some obstacles in there. And with Scorpio being a water sign and a fixed water sign, the way that I just envision Scorpio when I see it in a house is I think of wherever Scorpio's at, it's like that area of your life is like very karmic. It's like backed up water. It's like clogged up water that you can't flush, that you can't drain, and it's just getting contaminated. It's like a contaminated fish tank. It's like a toilet bowl that you took a big ass shit in and you threw up in, and you try to flush it, but you can't flush it, and the water just keeps rising and rising, and it overfills, and you got this big ass mess, and you gotta deal with that mess because you can't put no more shit in there until you deal with the shit that you already have. So essentially, like I said, whatever house you have Taurus in is very karmic. I mean, whatever house you have Scorpio in, it's very karmic. It's backed up sewer water, and you got to deal with that shit. And it's some shit that you probably don't want to deal with, but you have to deal with it. So, like I said, Scorpio's placement is very karmic wherever house it's in. And for a Taurus ascendant, Scorpio will go into the 7th house of marriage and relationships. Then, the real nail in the coffin is looking at where Libra is. Libra originally rules the 7th house of marriage and all that good stuff in relationships, right? Now you got Libra fall into the sixth house of debts and obstacles, and a house of prarabdha karma. Karma that you have to deal with, things that you can't avoid, things that you have to deal with, the issues you have to deal with, you know. So you got Libra in the sixth house for a Taurus ascendant. It shows us that it is your karma, your undeniable karma, your prarabdha karma, to deal with issues in regards to women and or marriage and or relationships. Those will be an area of, you know, heightened, you know, difficulties. And you really would have to deal with it, because if you're a Taurus ascendant, Venus is your ascendant lord. It's your sixth lord and it's your ascendant lord. So it shows that you'll really have to deal with it. And then, according to Thaldipica, you know, little book on astrology, I read in there that the sign that is the Muchakon sign of a planet, that house that is the Muchakon sign of a planet sort of has a greater impact, a greater, stronger influence over a native than the other sign that it rules. Now, granted, you know, so with you being a Taurus ascendant and Venus ruling Taurus, Venus Muchakon sign is Libra. So it shows us that sixth house area is something, is a huge thorn in the side of a Taurus individual. And it'll just be a huge thorn in your side in regards to the significations of Venus. And then you got, like I said, Scorpio in the seventh house. So I keep going in circles, but long story short, as I'm sure y'all understand by now with my examples and me rambling, relationships is very karmic in general, and a struggle in general for a Taurus ascendant or Taurus dominant people. And it's highlighted and emphasized even more in Rohini, with Brahma not really able to find a real suitable partner of his own, because anyone that would be a suitable partner for him would be his daughter, would be his offspring. And whenever he did try to chase after his own daughters, it wouldn't end well. They wouldn't want him. There would be some repercussion. So a Rohini person could really be blinded by lust. Their lust could get them in trouble, and they will have natural difficult marital karma and relationship karma. This doesn't mean that you won't date people and have sex and all that good stuff, but naturally for a Taurus ascendant, and especially that, at least for Rohini nakshatra, you'll probably have a hard time finding that right one partner. And when you do find that one right partner, it still might be some issues, because Brahma doesn't have sex with Saraswati. And then it is stated that Krishna, he was born under this nakshatra. He was born under this nakshatra. And Krishna, he doesn't marry. Well, maybe I should rephrase that, because there is a tale, a story of him indeed being married to like several wives, several women. I don't remember the exact number, but he was married to a plethora of women. But he didn't marry them because it's like, oh man, will you marry me? I love you. He married these women because I believe some of these women, they were like slaves, and he was like of royalty or something. And by him marrying these slaves, these people who was in prison, he would therefore have the ability to break them out of their position of being a slave or a prisoner, due to them being connected to his high status, his stature. Him marrying them and saying that, you know, they are associated and related and married to him would help save them from whatever situation and predicament that they was in. So he didn't marry those women out of a sense of love. He married them to sort of save and rescue them. So aside from that, it's not like he grew up and had a household where he was married to somebody and had kids and all that. No. So in a sense like that, you could say that Krishna was popular with the women, but it's not like he grew up in, like I said, a traditional, maybe monogamous household and raised a family and all that good stuff. So you see that awkward, difficult relationship karma still with Rohini. They might have a lot of sex and date people and chase after people, but they'll have that hard time finding that, maybe that one person. Another thing with Rohini nakshatra is that Brahma, he had issues with his own kids. Aside from wanting to have sex with his daughters, aside from him wanting to have sex with his daughters, there was times with his kids where he wanted them to reproduce. He wanted his kids, his offsprings, to reproduce and whatnot. And I'm forgetting the name of this character, the name of this saint that I'm gonna try and find real briefly while I'm talking to y'all. But there's this character who ended up persuading and throwing, there we go, Narada. Sage Narada at one point ended up convincing the descendants and offsprings of Brahma to instead don't raise a family, to don't reproduce, because he could tell that they are so enlightened, they are so knowledgeable, that they're just, you know, close to ascending and going to like some new plane, some new heaven, some new dimension. And Narada, Sage Narada, ended up interfering with Brahma's plan, which was him having his kids, his offsprings, and having humanity reproduce. And then Sage Narada eventually ends up getting cursed. He ends up getting cursed by Daksha, which is of course one of the many offsprings of Brahma. But to not get too off topic, there was a period where his kids did not want to reproduce and have sex, and Brahma got mad. And out of that rage at one point came Rudra, who is a deity associated with Ardra, and who was supposed to be like a different form or personification of Shiva. And I told you that Rudra ends up shooting off the head of Brahma because he was chasing after one of his daughters to have sex, and she didn't want to have sex with him. So you see that tension between father and son, or through his offsprings. There's natural difficult karma when it comes to Rohini nakshatra and children. And it makes sense, because here's another trick about Taurus. Think about this. If you make Taurus ascendant, what goes into the 5th house? The 5th house becomes Virgo from a Taurus ascendant. And Taurus originally rules the 6th house of debts, obstacles, and diseases, and prarabdha karma. Wherever you have Virgo at, wherever house Virgo is placed in your chart, that will be an area where you will have a little bit of difficulties, a little bit of struggle, a little bit of them 6th house issues will come into that house. So we see that for Rohini, it falls into Taurus. Brahma had difficulties more so than usual when it came to his children, because everything was his children, so he couldn't have sex with them, and his children didn't want to listen to him and reproduce with each other. And Shiva, or Rudra, ends up shooting off one of his father's own head. So one of the karmas of a Taurus ascendant is that little additional difficult karma when it comes to children. And you can see it even in Kritika nakshatra, because with Kritika nakshatra you have Kartikeya. He wasn't raised and born in a normal traditional way and manner. And then you can see it with Migrashira, the nakshatra that comes after Rohini. The deity is Soma. Soma has sex with Tara, the wife of Jupiter, and they end up creating Mercury, Buddha. Mercury and the moon, they do not have a good planetary relationship with one another. And I believe through lores, if my memory serves right, Mercury does not sort of resents his biological father, Soma, and he gets cursed by Brihaspati, his stepfather. And it really fucked up and changed and shifted the projection of the trajectory of Mercury's life. So with those 3 nakshatras that fall in the sign of Taurus, all of their 5th house being Virgo, you see that Taurus, along with having a difficult relationship marriage karma, they also have a difficult karma when it comes to children. You can see that. It's a little bit heightened more than usual. They have a difficult karma when it comes to children. And you see it in Rohini nakshatra when it comes to, you know, his children. because of Brahma's children. What else do I have to say about this nakshatra? Let me look at my notes, because I already highlighted the sexual, lustful nature and how his children don't listen to him. I already hit the symbolism. Also, another thing to back up my claim with the, the difficult karma and relationship with children associated with Rohini nakshatra and just Taurus in general. Think about Krishna. Krishna, like I said, he was born apparently under Rohini nakshatra. Krishna was somebody who was adopted. It stated that he was adopted. So also, he didn't really have like a normal upbringing in a sense. So maybe you could see some theme of adoption also with Rohini nakshatra, but definitely some unusual karma with children could be present with Rohini nakshatra. Now, the bird that's associated with Rohini nakshatra is an owl. To be specific, a white owl or a snowy owl. And the deity that's associated with an owl is Lakshmi, the wife of Vishnu. And she's also known as the goddess of wealth. And this just puts even more emphasis. Yeah, she's the goddess of like wealth and beauty, which goes perfectly with Taurus and Rohini. As I told you, the cast of this nakshatra is a worker. And it's a very fertile nakshatra, even in the Shakti. And I broke down the symbolisms of how this nakshatra can be associated with produce and crops and wealth and a merchant. It was long-lasting prosperity and wealth. And the goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of beauty and wealth, is connected to this nakshatra too. Due to the bird being related to this nakshatra is an owl. So you just see that theme of wealth and beauty. Beauty because Rohini, the person that Brahma was chasing, his daughter, she was considered to just be very beautiful and alluring to Brahma. She was very beautiful to Brahma. And then Lakshmi is known as a goddess of beauty also, I believe. And then Taurus falls in the second house, and it deals with the face, the eyes, the eyebrows, the lips, the nose. All the main things you look at when you're looking at somebody's face. So it's this nakshatra is associated with beauty and maybe cosmetics and plastic surgery. And then it's a moon ruled nakshatra. All moon ruled nakshatras could also be very smooth and player-esque, because the moon could be associated with Soma, and he was very smooth in taking a married man's wife. And there's the lore or the myth that all the 27 nakshatras are like the wives of the moon or the girlfriends of the moon. And then when you associate of the dasha avatars, because essentially there's also this connection that every graha, every planet or whatever, is associated with a different avatar of Vishnu. And the moon is considered to be the dasha avatar, the avatar of Krishna. And Vishnu in general, but you could definitely say Krishna, is a very smooth and slick and clever character. He has his flute. He is loved by everybody. He's mischievous also. He wins. He helps Arjuna through the war in the Mahabharata. He also is supposedly responsible for moving the constellations around and sort of hiding or removing the Abhijit nakshatra, the undefeated, the unconquerable nakshatra. He ends up removing it or hiding it because the people that he was going to be fighting against in the Mahabharata, they planned on starting a war when the moon would transit this undefeated, unconquerable nakshatra. And he knew that if they was to start the war on that day, then they would probably be undefeatable and that he would lose. So he ends up hiding and cheating and removing the constellation. So all moon ruled nakshatras, they're very slick and clever and player-esque and could be mischievous. And you can associate those themes with Rohini nakshatra also. Yeah, that's something I forgot to mention about the symbolism. The banyan tree. The banyan tree is a tree that is stated to have a lifespan of like 200 to 500 years. It's also known as one of the world's largest trees. It's a tree that is associated with Brahma, and then some people, when I Google it on the internet, they associate the banyan tree with the Trimurti of Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. And then I just think and imagine if there was a person or an elder person or a deity who was like, you know, able to live for like maybe 200 to 500 years, and they was able to communicate that knowledge of being around for 200 and 500 years. So I don't know, with that little knowledge of this alternative symbolism being the banyan tree, I just associate the nakshatra with wealth of all kinds. Wealth of knowledge, wealth of literal material wealth, maybe them just being wealthy in beauty, you know, the physical appearance wealth, and maybe it's just having a wealth of health, longevity. That's something that you can easily connect this nakshatra with, is longevity. And now I'll wrap up this video of this nakshatra with the yoni animal, the snake, the male cobra. And of course you can connect snakes and cobras with Aslesha nakshatra and the nagas and all that good stuff. But one thing that I learned about snakes from me doing a little brief research is that snakes can live a long time, survive a long time underwater. They can survive hours sometimes underwater. So you can say that snake rule nakshatras or Rohini nakshatra, they could love to be near water or some affinity with liquids and fluids, which is another reason why you see another connection, because it's a moon root nakshatra. Moon has control and influence over the water. A Rohini person can love to drink, whether it's liquor or consume some favorite liquid, they can love to drink. And then you have with the snakes they abandon their children at birth. They abandon their children before they are born. So think about that. I just told you how Rohini nakshatra or Taurus ascendants and signs in general can have difficult karma with children, with their children. And then boom, the yoni animal is a snake, a male cobra. And snakes predominantly, they abandon their kids before they're even born. So and then Krishna was born under this nakshatra. Krishna was adopted, it's stated. So you see that difficult karma with children yet again reinforced when it comes to just looking at the yoni animal. And then, what else can I say about this nakshatra with the snake? Snakes predominantly they travel alone. They be by themselves for the most part, from what I googled and looked up. They only mainly come together to have sex, or they might come together when they go for their little periods of hibernation. And I just associate that with cuddling, because when you're hibernating, at least when a snake hibernates, you're just less active. So snakes mainly come together to fuck and have sex, in order to cuddle and hibernate. So you can see that a Rohini native, a Mrigashira native, or a Aslesha native, they can love to have a lot of sex. They can love to have orgies, because snakes have orgies, and they can love to cuddle. They can love to cuddle afterwards. And then after that, you know, they just dip. They gone. They got what the fuck they wanted. And they have difficult karma with children. Snakes don't have ears. They listen and feel vibrations. You know, you got things known as snake charmers, snake dancers, whatever. They play their flute and the snake begins to move and react to it. So, you know, you can make the connection that these people, they can love to dance. They can really love to dance. They can love to drink. What else could I say about the snake? If you want to make the connection of snakes with the nagas, it's stated that the loka, the realm of the nagas, is real beautiful and adorned with gems and diamonds and jewelry. So you could say that a Rohini person that can really love to be adorned with jewelry and nice material things. And then snakes is sort of associated with reptiles and lizards and dragons. And if you make the connection of Naruto, the anime, you have a snake-like character in there named Orochimaru. He learns forbidden, he wants to and learns forbidden techniques and stuff. Taboo, occult techniques. And he has done surgery and sacred techniques on himself to alter his appearance and make him look eternally young and youthful. So you can maybe associate, you know, snake root nakshatras with, like I said, wealth of occultic knowledge, and maybe want to always have a youthful appearance and look beautiful and take care of their skin, because snakes, they shed their skin. So the skin of a Rohini person or a Mrigashira person or a Slasha person can be very important to them. And then when you connect the connection of snakes with maybe reptiles like dragons or whatever, I think of the video game Spyro the Purple Dragon, and he runs around collecting gems or magical eggs and stuff, or crystals or whatever. So you see yet again a connection with something of value. And then you have, you know, like Shrek, at least the first movie, the Red Dragon guarding Fiona in the castle. Or maybe that's like some stereotypical trope in general in fairy tales of a castle being guarded by a fire-breathing dragon. So you see that connection, that trope of snakes and dragons and all of them associated with guarding something of great value. Another thing is that snakes, they go into their hibernation mode, their brumation or whatever, randomly. They do not have no set time for the most part. So, and in snakes, like I said, they can go underwater and stay submerged in the water for a long period of time. So a Rohini person, a Mrigashira person, and a Slasha person, they can have random moments and acts where they just want to retreat and just be left the fuck alone from the world. It's like after they maybe had their whole spree, their fuck fest, they just want to be left the fuck alone. And like I said, the connection with occultic knowledge, the alternative symbol of this nakshatra being a fish and a temple. Fish is a symbol of Christianity. It's associated with the religion Christianity. And the snake in Genesis, in the beginning of the Bible, was cursed to have to eat dirt and crawl on his stomach for the rest of his days for convincing, you know, Adam and Eve or whatever to eat the apple. But if you pay attention to what I just said, it says that the snake was cursed to have to crawl on its belly for the rest of its days. So it makes you think, if in Genesis it stated that the snake was cursed to have to crawl on its belly, what was it doing prior? And if you research and Google Nagas, they're not just like literal snakes that crawl on their stomach. They are like entities, deities, who are sort of like humanoids sometimes in their depiction, and they can walk. So, and also if you read the beginning of the Bible, Genesis, it was only after Adam and Eve ate the apple after being convinced by the snake that they gained knowledge and awareness of themselves. Prior to them eating the apple, they didn't know how to create clothing, and they didn't know that they was naked. They didn't know nothing. They was ignorant in a sense. But it's like after they eat the apple, they gain knowledge and awareness. And then that's a whole nother video of like, why was God mad in regards to them eating this apple and gaining this knowledge? Why did he want them to have the knowledge? You can draw a million conclusions, but you can just see that with this nakshatra, a person might have issues with their parents, or specifically their father figure. They might just naturally rebel against the order of the father, because Brahma's children, they didn't want to listen to him at one point when it comes to reproducing. Snakes, they abandon their kids before they're born. The snake could be associated with Christianity in the Bible, of how they defy God's will and convince Adam and Eve to eat the apple. Snakes can be connected to Rahu and Ketu, these dragon serpent entities, and how they, and when Rahu and Ketu, when they transit the zodiac signs in the opposite direction. So they'll go from Pisces to Aquarius, and Aquarius to Capricorn. They transit backwards. Snakes sort of are associated with occultic knowledge, and they go against like the natural flow and order of things. They sort of rebel God's will. They sort of rebel authority in a sense. So you see that sense of rebellion or trickery and cheating with the snake rule and associated nakshatras. And you would see that also with Rohini nakshatra. And that's all that I have to say in regards to Rohini nakshatra. I hope I gave you great insight, clarity, and knowledge on Rohini nakshatra. And I'll see you whenever I decide to redo one of my other nakshatra videos, and see you next time.